You know, if you don't believe one person can make a difference, take a look at the history of suicidology, and it is a study. Everybody hears it. You do what? I say, I'm a suicidologist. What in the world is that? I said, well, let me give you a Latin class real quick. Any word that ends in ology is study of the word you just heard. So ology is the study of suicide when it's suicidology. And when I got home from the Army, that was a short line at school. So it was pretty quick to get to the front of the line. And I was tired of standing in line, I can tell you. But I went to LSU, and by the way, for those of you from Alabama, LSU is still undefeated today. Sorry. I had to get that one in. We've lived a long time in hope. So my presentation this morning is going to talk a little bit about will you be found in the formula of hope. Now, when you think about formulas, and maybe chemistry was your favorite class in school, it wasn't mine. There's some very simple formulas that we would not be able to live without. Would you agree? Oxygen is just one element with two molecules. O2. We can't do without oxygen. Water, H2O. Simple formulas, aren't they? You've already seen one element of the formula up here on the stage today, the Hope Squad. Let's give those kids a hand one more time. And I got to say, Matt, you have given me hope for millennials. Thank you so much. It's been very difficult. I'm a member of the chronologically gifted group. And we have waited a long time to see hope come from the millennials. So thank you for answering that call. So you're part of the formula of hope within the millennial group. You know, one of the things that I used to enjoy doing very seldom, I grew up on a cattle ranch. My dad was from West Texas. I have my cowboy boots on. So when I grew up on that place, I know that you'd see Western movies and how romantic Western movies were. It is not romantic to grow up on a cattle ranch. I got news for you. But I used to think that the best part of our day was every now and then we'd sit on the porch and rocking chairs and we'd talk to each other. Now, we still have porches in Louisiana and we still have rocking chairs, but they're chained together so nobody will steal them. And we're all inside on screens. Is that happening in Texas? I tell you what, I never know what to expect when I come out here to see my cousins who still live in West Texas, because I've learned that they'll drive 100 miles just to have a cup of coffee with you, because Texas is so big. And I really now understand when Christina called me and said, would you come talk? We get that little get-together for lunch. And I'm looking at this crowd, and I said, well, of course this is little to you. You're in Texas. You get this many people together, and you got an LSU football game where I come from. So it's really great to be with you. Let me just get to my point, because they come with a hook in a minute. I started this National Suicidology Training Center. For one thing, it's hard to say, and you have to have an acronym, so I have an acronym. But I want you to notice that it's actually a metaphor. And there's a lighthouse there, and the goal is for the lighthouse, you'll notice the light shines beyond the logo. You see how the gold bands? And it's purple and gold, so once again, an LSU slug. But what we want to do is get people to come, and 20 at a time. We won't allow more than 20 people to come for no less than a day at a time, but often for 2, 3, 5 days, to drill down on this topic so that when they go back, they become the lighthouse in their community. Much the way this foundation is a lighthouse in Tarrant County and throughout Texas. You're shining your light out. Now, do you know this about lighthouses? I mean, you live a little bit inland. You might not know this. A lighthouse is not the place you go to when you're in the water in desperate need. A lighthouse stands on a rocky shore and points towards safe harbor. And that's what we need more of in our country if we're going to get to zero suicide. We've got to have as many of you as we can be lighthouses that point towards safe harbor. What I've learned in all these years is that we expect people in the safe harbor to know what to do when someone is brought through QPR or Hope Squad or any of the Beyond the Cube. We've got to have people there that know what to do with the person that has now been identified at risk. Specifically, they need to know what to do about suicide. They've got to be able to talk to you about your thoughts of suicide the way you would say to someone past assault. It's got to be that casual a conversation, as though we're on that porch together, just talking about life and about wanting to die. That's a very hard topic to get comfortable with, but that's what you've got to be able to do. When people would come in to see me, I would tell them there are only two things. Are you coming to get me off the stage already? I said, I've got a few more minutes. People would come in to see me and they'd wanted to die by suicide. I said, there's only two questions I have for you. Where do you hurt? How can I help? Because I've transferred all the information to them, haven't I? They have to tell me where they hurt. I can't tell them. And they've got to tell me how I can help. By empowering that person who's going from hopelessness to hopefulness. You see, they go from hopelessness to hopefulness thinking that by dying they will be out of their pain. So my simple question is, if we can help you leave your pain and still live, are you willing to do that? And they absolutely will say, well, of course I am. I just haven't been able to find a way out. If you go back to Rabbi's poem, Take My Hand, it's as simple as that and as complex as that. Suicide is a paradoxical cause of death. It is full of opposites being true, but we do not like that in America. We want 1 + 1 = 2. That's not the way suicide works. So let me give an example. Let me go back here for a second. I created this model. Somebody else did the graphics because it looked pretty crude when I did it. But if you take the top of the circle, prevention reduces our need to do intervention. Intervention is when we're helping a person who's out on that ledge of life wanting to die. Post-intervention means they've had an attempt, they survived it, and now we're getting the help be safe in the future from suicide. That's our most underutilized portion of this circle. Then post-vention are those kind acts that lost teams do, like Leslie did when she went to the Harris's home, to be there to help them navigate these troubled waters. But if we do good post-vention, we actually create prevention. So we know that lost teams are reducing the number of people that might die. Because when they come to group and they get the help, they find that safe harbor, they say, I don't believe I'd be here today if I hadn't found this group. I believe that. I don't need any more research to believe that person that tells me that. Because they know firsthand that hope looked to them like a very difficult possibility. So I went to the source of all information, Wikipedia, and I got this definition. Faith is a confidence or trust in a person, place, or a belief that's not based on proof. Hope is an optimistic attitude of mind based on an expectation or desire. I'm okay with both of those. I put it this way. Faith says it is so now. Hope says it can be in the future. You see, that person who's wanting to die wants hope that they can survive. But they need guidance, they need support, they need the proper, tender, loving care that we don't find available today in our typical system of care. We arrive in a hospital, in a psychiatric unit today, all too often when I read the records of someone's death by suicide, it occurs within a few hours of discharge, using the exact plan they shared at the time of admission, but they have a record where nobody ever talked to them again about suicide. We've got to get beyond telling people that the way to leave the hospital is to deny you're having thoughts of suicide 3 days in a row, then you can go home. All too often, going home means they go home to die. We've got to go beyond knowing how to refer to making sure the people we expect to know do, in fact, know what to do when they arrive. They are the hope we have to get. We have to find lighthouses and all those treatment facilities. For so many people that look forward, this is the kind of hope they see. They see these troubled waters. They see this place turning them away. And what they've spent most of their time is navigating between hope and despair. That's a very difficult desert to be on, where you struggle to have the hope when inside you're having trouble breathing. Can people get past it? Absolutely. So many can. Are families going to be the ones that carry the burden? Absolutely. They always have. The taboo, the stigma is placed on the family in a way that is so judgmental and impossible to hold that only another person who's found a way to shed that weight, standing in front of them, that can say, I'm here to help. And as soon as they lock eyes and know that that person has been through this loss, hope is established. And when hope is established, people thrive. It's a burden. It's a long time to get to the place where you have a suicide and you're then able to make meaning of that loss. Every one of you in this room are participants in this family making meaning of her death, of Jordan's death. Does that make sense to you? You're part of that formula right now. The question is, where will you be in the formula tomorrow and next year? How will you take the energy in this room, put it in a bottle, and take it with you like lightning so that you become a lighthouse, if for nothing else, to point people toward the foundation where they can get training and they can get skills that help them become part of the installation of hope. Installation of hope is what families get when somebody shows up at their door unexpected as a volunteer to say, you've already paid too great a price. We're here to point you toward safe harbor. If you get there, you'll find others that will be with you in your grief, because that canyon of why is a very difficult river to take. The whys are always present, but the grief lives in what? What does this death mean to me today? And what it means to this family today is people are being helped. People whose lives are being changed. More people are finding safe harbor. This new generation that's coming up with Hope Squad, that's our best future. That's the safest thing we could be doing, is training young people now to talk about suicide. My best friend took his life when I was 12. We were pulled out on the school ground and told at the end of the day. I know my teacher put her job on the line by even telling us. You can look at me and tell when I was 12 was a while back. But the truth is, she loved every one of us, and that was probably the hardest day of her career. But to this day, those of us that are still alive, when we see each other, still up at a reunion, still up on some corner of the room, like we were on that school ground, together, all alone. And when we do, you know what they look at me and say? Why do you think he did it? And I know nothing now that I knew then. No more than I knew then. What I know is it was a failure to cope with a self-defined crisis. But you see, several of those kids have also died by suicide. And we can't help but remember role modeling does make a difference. Role model hope, and we can build this circle strongly. We can create programs like Suicide to Hope and CAMS that help those who have lived through an attempt. We can help them not be at risk in the future. And we can provide that tender, loving care to families that have paid this ultimate price. Every one of us is a referral. Every one of us can point towards safe harbor. I appreciate the chance to be here. I'm used to clearing my throat for 15 minutes, much less speaking for 15 minutes. I'm used to doing 6 hours of training minimum. But I hope I've given you something you can take with you today beyond what we've had here today. Be part of the formula for hope, because I believe that 85 Hope Squads and 70,000 students being touched and 5,000 residents, this can be the drop in the bucket. Tom and I were talking about earlier. It feels like a drop in the bucket sometimes when the bucket is so big. Well, oh, what a drop this is. When I look out at this room, all I see is hope. Please go home, look in the mirror, and find that symbol of hope in your formula and make a difference tomorrow. You can do it because they have too. Thank you.